Let me guess, you love writing documentation. Okay, maybe not. If you're a developer, it's probably one of the least favorite parts of your job. You build a thing, you're excited, you do some stuff, and then you need to go and write about it. But what if I told you there was an easier way? What if I told you there was a way that you could use your actual application code and the telemetry that your application code generates to make your system self-documenting? Yeah, sounds magical, doesn't it? That's what you're going to learn in this video, how you can use the telemetry that your system outputs to build a more self-documenting system. Let's get into it. I want you just to stop for a second and just think about how you document your system today. Let's imagine you're building an event-driven system, you're adding a new consumer. How would you go and actually document the fact that you're consuming an event? Or equally, how would you document the fact that you're publishing a new event as a producer? When you love writing code, you love building applications, you love building systems, this additional step of going to write about it can feel like extra work that you don't really want to do because frankly, you just want to get back to writing the code. So what other options do you have? An approach I've found really valuable over my career is making your system self-documenting using the actual telemetry that your system outputs. Let me show you what I mean. So this is some .NET application code. Don't worry about the fact that it's .NET. You could do this in any language, any runtime, any way you want. And this is a producer inside an event-driven system. It happens to be using Amazon EventBridge. You could apply this to Kafka, to Service Bus, to Google Cloud Pubs. And there's a couple of things that are happening here that really help us make our system more self-documenting. The first is that we're using some kind of structured event format. We're using this generate cloud event extension method here to generate a structure in the cloud events format. There's an earlier video in this series on this YouTube channel talking about cloud events and structuring events. So go back and watch that if you're not familiar with cloud events. The TLDR is that it's just a structured way of organizing your events. The important thing when it comes to building a self-documenting system is this section here. What you are adding is the trace identifier. You're adding a trace parent to the event that you publish. The reason this helps you make a more self-documenting system is this is the key thing that will allow you to link the different pieces of your system together. So the first and important thing we're doing is we're using some kind of structured message format when we send a message, and we will do this wherever you were sending the message to: SQS, SNS, Service Bus Topics, Service Bus Queues, Kafka, RabbitMQ, it doesn't matter what type of messaging you're doing, use some kind of structured data. And then the second thing we're doing to help make our system self-documenting is this line here. So we've got our telemetry. We're creating this new span here for publishing a message, and that span is going to be called publish order created. And then we're adding what's called the semantic conventions for messaging. This is just a set of standard tags that all spans related to messaging should have. And you notice we've made this a very generic extension method so that you can call this on any span across your entire system. Now, in most cases, I would assume that whatever company you're working for, you use the same programming language for most services that you work on. So making this some kind of shared library that can really easily add these standardizations is probably a good idea. So once you've got this telemetry in place, and remember, you could do a lot of this with logging as well, but distributed tracing is what really makes this powerful. And then you can actually use this telemetry that your system's generating to help your system document itself. So let's imagine you're the order service here, and you're publishing this order completed event today, but you need to start publishing a second version. You need to make a breaking change to the structure of your event. So the first thing you're going to do is start publishing version 2 of the order completed event. So here you're now publishing event 1 and event 2. Now, what you're interested in as a producer is who is using which version of these events. Now, historically, you might have relied on maybe just blind luck, maybe just people talking to each other. Maybe you relied on some crazy set of linked documentation to link who's talking to who. Maybe you just use something like async API to document it. But now that you've got this telemetry in place, importantly, now that you've got this standardization in your telemetry that you've got in place, you can now start to do some really interesting things. Because you can now go off to your telemetry, and rather than relying on blind faith, rather than relying on people hopefully messaging you that they're starting to use your events, you can start to do some really interesting things. So I'm going to start searching for all spans with the name publish order completed.v1. I just need to wrap that in some quotes, run that query. There's been nothing in the last 15 minutes. That's what you would expect. Let's go last 4 hours. And there we have some data. We can see in the last 4 hours, there have been 15 events published that are publish orders.order completed.v1. Great. You can now go and have a look at this telemetry. And remember, what the thing is we're interested in is who is consuming this event downstream. Now, because you've got that structure in your telemetry, both as a producer and importantly as a consumer, your system has almost just documented itself. If we take this top one here, we can see we published version 1, and then we published version 2 as well. When you publish version 2 of the event, the new version, you can see that the publish happened and there's no downstream telemetry off the back of that. And if we go and look at our span links as well, we can see that we've got a downstream span link from the loyalty service processing orders.order completed.v1. So you can see you've got one downstream consumer from V1, and you can also see this inside here as well. We can see the loyalty service has actually gone off and processed that event. Currently, you've got no consumers of version 2. Now, this is, of course, bad. You want people to start consuming version 2, but at least this gives you a starting point. And let's imagine for a second off the back of this that a new consumer comes along, a brand new system spins up in a part of the organization that you don't even know exists. Because you've got this standardization in your telemetry, particularly if you're using some kind of shared wrapper to wrap up your events that automatically adds this telemetry, when that new system spins up, they add that new telemetry, they add that consumer, that's going to automatically feed through and start populating your telemetry so you can see those downstream consumers. Now, of course, this isn't a silver bullet that's going to solve all of your documentation problems. This doesn't capture the context about what a service actually does, which team owns it. Not that you couldn't add that if you wanted to, but it doesn't cover that. So maybe you're still going to need to write some documentation, but at least when it comes to documenting how the different pieces of your system link together and communicate with each other, I honestly think the best possible documentation you can build is the one that is generated from how your system actually works.